Welcome, everybody, to Tammy Tuesday, the podcast of life, love, and purpose. I am super excited about my guest today. She is someone who I'm near and dear with. It is my niece, Kinzie Johnson. She also is the owner and founder of Unfiltered Medspa. She is has an amazing business as well. Kinzie, I'm so happy that you're here.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I know, me too. It's been fun because I have had, of course, my kids, and I've had a nephew on here, and now I get to have you.
I know. It's so fun.
I know it is fun. And I'm excited about our conversation because so much has happened in recent times. And just to clarify, I have done a podcast in regards to my sister, and this is Kinzie is Nikki, my sister's daughter. She has 3 kids. So this is her daughter, who's her middle child. You are how old now?
26.
26.
I'm like, how old?
That's why I was like, I don't want to screw this up. Yeah. I was going to say 27, but yeah. So anyway, but you have done such an amazing job in your life, Kinzie, and I am so beyond proud of you with everything that you've accomplished. You've gone through nursing school, and I don't know if we can make the announcement for what's coming.
Sure.
What is it?
I am starting FNP school, Family Nurse Practitioner School, in January.
That is amazing and a very big deal.
Yeah, I'm excited. It should be good.
I'm proud of you. And I'm excited to see what you get to do with all that and how that's going to affect the things that you practice in your business and how you grow and evolve. Because I think that you're totally in your sweet spot. Do you love what you do?
I do. I love being a nurse in general. Like, nursing is really a powerful profession, and you just get to help so many people. And I'm in another side of nursing that's kind of helping people, maybe not in the most traditional way, but I still feel like every day when I go to work, I help people feel better about themselves. And I think that sometimes this side of nursing gets a little discounted with that, but I still very much help people all the time. And that's why I got into the profession. So even though I'm not necessarily bedside anymore, I still help people every day.
Yeah. Well, I love that too. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. About you like to help people feel better about themselves. And that's an important thing for us. And we tend to discount how important that is in life. And I think that your approach to it and how you handle that it's really cool, and it is forgotten sometimes. So yeah, that makes so much sense that you're doing it and that why you love doing it. And so I highly encourage you out there. She has 2 locations. She's got one in DC Ranch and one in Old Town. So you can reach out to her at the end. We'll do a little plug and you can talk about where to find you and all that. But I just wanted to reiterate that because Kinzie is amazing. She does amazing work and people love her and seek her out all the time. So if you're here locally, she's a great place to visit. But I want to dive into some more life stuff. So in recent months, obviously, your mom has passed, and that has been a lot and very hard. I want to talk about what's happened to you since that's gone on, because you have done it blows my mind, Kinzie, how much growth has happened with you since this event.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about it a little bit because I feel like so many times in people's lives, and we talk about so many different things on this podcast that are very deep and spiritual and things that we can't explain, the unseen, and all those things that happen in life. And a lot of times they start when a huge traumatic event happens. So first I want to talk about you and your mom and your relationship, because you two, especially in the end, were very, very close.
Yes.
And you were truly you were at bat for her to help her get better. So tell me about your relationship and kind of what's happened. And you don't need to get into all the gritty details, but I just mean, tell me what's evolved since this whole thing has happened, because you've just grown so much. It's blown my mind.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think my mom and I's relationship has always been a little bit complicated and different than maybe the normal mother-daughter relationship, but beautiful nonetheless. Over the last, I would say 10 months to a year, we definitely got much, much closer. And that is from having a very intense exchange of emotions with each other, something that I think would usually break a lot of people, and they maybe wouldn't be able to forgive that, or, telling naked truths like that is going to hurt the other person but needs to be said is a really hard thing to do, and it takes 2 people that really love each other to overcome that. And I'm
speaking your truth,
exactly,
to each other.
Yeah, and especially with your own mom, that's a really hard conversation to have, and it's going to hurt each other. But I'm so glad we did have those hard conversations, because if we didn't, we would not have gotten as close as we were the last year-ish, I would say. So it's always been up and down, but the last year, like, we were really close up until she did pass, talking every day, if not multiple times a day. She's my first phone call anytime, I got in the car. My boyfriend works 24-hour shifts, and I didn't love being alone at night, so we would literally talk on the phone every night and turn on Netflix at the same time. We're just really, really close. Even though she was sick, she still really made an effort to show up for me in the ways that she could. Maybe it wasn't physically in person all the time, but like on the phone and FaceTime, like we did stay really close. And
Talk really quick about, I want to talk about Lyme.
Yeah.
Because you and your brother and your dad, one of your brothers, have been severely affected by this disease. And I want to talk about your experience with it, because since this whole thing has come to be in our family, I have been so called and pulled to talk about this.
Yeah.
Because it feels like it's a huge epidemic in our world that is not addressed, it's not recognized, it's not received, it's not seen.
Right.
And I want to talk about it because you have been through tremendous treatment. You, your dad, and your brother, and your mom was about to. And I've talked about how sick she was with Lyme. But I want to talk about that a little bit, because explain to me how that was for you, what happened, what your symptoms were, and how they differed from your other family members, and what the treatment was like. Talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. So when my little brother got sick, this would probably be about 2.5 years ago now, when he was down in Central America, and he literally just fell ill one day, like became completely yellow, couldn't move, like almost like a really terrible flu. And so they went to get his blood drawn, and the doctor called and was like, you need to go to the hospital right away. Like, no answers other than like, he is really sick, get to the hospital. Well, they're in Nicaragua. And a lot of people would think that's a really terrible place to be. Actually, exceptional healthcare he got there, which is so interesting.
That is interesting.
But they said some of the best care that they've had. For just, I guess, taking care of them in the present. So they diagnosed him with Evans-Fisher syndrome while he was down there, which essentially is a blood disorder that attacks your platelets. So normal platelet values are anywhere from 150,000 to 450,000. Slater at that time was sitting around 3,000 to 5,000. So he was bedridden. He couldn't walk, couldn't even get up to go pee, because any minor like bump, you hit the bed, you trip, he'll bleed out and die. And so it just kind of came out of nowhere. And when he was really, really little, he did have that Kawasaki's disease, which is like the heart condition. But ever since then, and he was 3 at the time, he was now 16. So really no issues, and it just didn't make sense. So after like months of searching in the United States, when they went back to Hawaii, obviously Hawaii doesn't have the most opportune healthcare there. So they did come back to Arizona, and they just searched everywhere. I mean, they tried the Mayo Clinic, they tried Stanford, they tried everywhere you could possibly think of just calling doctors every single day. And everyone was like, Evans-Fisher itself is so rare.
Yeah, I never even heard of that.
Yeah, there's only... And I don't want to say numbers because I don't want to get like quoted on it, but at the time when I was looking, it was only like 15,000 cases. Like, it was right next to nothing.
Whoa.
And, going through nursing school and all of that, like, I had no idea what it was. And my family was kind of hoping maybe I'd have some input. And I just felt stupid, honestly, because I was like, I have no idea what's going on. And even I talked to my preceptors, I talked to my faculty there and my teachers, and they were like, I have no idea. And I would talk to them a lot about my mom before she was diagnosed, of like, what is this? What's going on? And
what could this be?
Yeah, a lot of them just had no idea. So finally, we found a doctor, because my dad had a friend that went to anesthesiologist school with this guy, and was like, you need to go to Envita Medical Center. And my dad was like, okay, well, this is our last resort. Let's just go and see what they have to say. So
this was obviously when you were back here.
Yeah, so this was after maybe like 2 or 3 months of searching, when they pretty much told us that what Slater had was fatal, and there's really just nothing that they can do. And it's just kind of a matter of time of like, you can't stay on steroid injections forever. It's really not good for you.
Right.
And that's kind of the only thing that was keeping him up and going, was steroids.
Yeah.
So we went to Envita Medical Center, which is in Scottsdale. It's amazing. And they diagnosed him with Lyme disease. There's so many different strains of Lyme. There's Lyme, and then there's TBRF, which is kind of the same thing as Lyme, but it stands for like tick-borne recurring infection. So it's so complex and so misunderstood. And I feel like it's a lot like cancer in that way, where it's really hard with insurance. There's a lot of different opinions out there. And so it's a really hard thing to receive treatment for. And so if you do want help and you are in the right place, you don't get insurance help with it. It's all out of pocket, and it's all while you're doing it. So a lot of people don't have that kind of money to be able to do something like that. And a lot of people get sick and die from Lyme. Luckily,
what were his, because were all of your symptoms totally different from each other?
Extremely
That's
different.
what's so complicated about
Yeah.
diseases, Lyme and diseases like Lyme, because you can't detect it.
Right.
You don't know what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's so bizarre that 3 of us ended up having it and not my older brother. But Slater was really sick with Evans Fisher. So like extreme fatigue, headaches. He looked jaundiced, where like his whole body was yellow. He would get really high fevers. And on top of that, we got the diagnosis of, he's living with a fatal autoimmune blood disorder. And so there has to be an underlying cause, right? Well, Lyme is the underlying cause for a lot of different autoimmune things, a lot of different issues that we have going on in our body and disease processes. Lyme is behind a lot of it. And,
well, can it be mistaken for other things too? I've heard MS, lupus.
Lupus is a big one.
So many things, because it attacks so many different things in your body. And every case is extremely different.
So rare, right? So Slater gets diagnosed. He's going through treatment. And
so the Evans Fisher was a result of the Lyme?
Yes.
Okay.
Which he went through treatment and he got so much better. Like night and day, looked like a different kid. And his took a little bit longer. His took about 5 months, just because, they would try to do certain infusions, but his platelets would have to be at a certain level. So his was very unique, and it was a really hard balancing act.
Yeah.
Keeping his blood high enough, but still administering antibiotics to cross the blood-brain barrier and all the things that had to take place. His took longer for sure than what mine and my dad's did. The only reason I found out that I had it, and my symptoms kind of looked very different from his, when I was in nursing school, I had like extreme fatigue. I was getting like these rashes, almost like, they weren't hives though. They almost looked like big, massive, like flare-ups of eczema, I guess you could say, but they weren't. I mean, you've seen what they look like. They're just very bizarre looking, and I would get them everywhere. There wasn't like, oh, I'd only get it if I touched something on this part. Like I would just be covered in it. I kind of just always chalked my symptoms up. Well, going out on your own after high school is really hard. And then, nursing school is really stressful. And, I was in college, I was engaging in college activities. Like there were so many things that I was like, well, it just makes sense why I feel like crap. Right.
Yeah.
And then I started getting these massive headaches where I would just be like bedridden for days. And it wasn't like migraine-y. It was just like, I could not move. And I had no idea why, because I'd go to the regular doctor and they were like, oh, you're okay. So I finally went to go see a naturopath who's also here in Scottsdale, and she's amazing. I guess she's an NP, but she's very holistic in the way that she practices. And my boyfriend's mom recommended her. So I went to see her. She drew my labs. They came back and she's like, we have a lot of different things going on here. Like kind of autoimmune based, really pointing at lupus. And I'm like, that's insane. I know what lupus is. I don't feel like I have that. I'm too young. I don't have any of the underlying factors. So as I was with Slater every day in treatment, since he was underage, me or my dad had to be there every single day. And most of the time it was me. And so I got to really see what was going on behind the scenes there. And I was also working really closely with his doctors. And I would show up with rashes. I would show up looking like crap. They'd be like, are you hungover? And I'm like, no, I feel awful.
It's like you were at the right place at the right time.
Exactly. Yeah. Like divine intervention, honestly.
Really?
And so they were like, you should get tested. So after Slater finished with his treatment, and it was like a night and day difference, I decided to take the test last December. So I took it, and it turns out that I have Lyme even worse than he did. I had Lyme.
And even just the test is extremely expensive.
Oh, yeah. And it's hard because they have a ton of different ones out there, but to be able to take the right one is really important. And so you're not going to get anywhere with a blood test with Lyme because it hides in your tissues. It doesn't sit in your blood. And that's a really big reason why it's underdiagnosed is because people will just do standard blood tests, and unless you had just gotten bit within 45 days, it's not going to be there. So it's hiding in your tissue. So when you take an accurate Lyme test, you go through these steps to kind of wake it up in your tissues. So you kind of go on like a run or try to exert yourself a lot. And you can do different like dry brushing things before you pee in the cup to send your test in, because you want to make sure that you wake
Activate
it up.
it, yeah.
And some people will take the test and it won't be activated, and they'll get a negative result when really they have it. So the testing, let alone, is just really hard, and not to mention so expensive because insurance doesn't touch Lyme. So
that's a huge problem. That's one of the reasons why I want to continue to talk about it, because people are not aware of how much this is happening out there.
Oh yeah. Right. And I had no idea. And I had just gone through nursing school, and I'm like, I've never even heard of this. Like, what are you even talking about? Right. And I feel like maybe now in the past year, it's talked about a little bit more, because I feel like some celebrities have come out with it, and like I know Justin Bieber had it really bad. So different people have come out a little bit, but it's still not talked about.
No.
And it's really hard with, the healthcare industry and big pharma and that stuff. It's going to take a long time for it to become a norm and part of insurance.
Right.
So yeah, I was diagnosed worse than Slater. I guess my labs just looked worse. I had Lyme and I had TBRF, multiple different strains. And so immediately in January, I started treatment, which entailed getting the permacath put in Monday through Friday, going to Invita every single day for about 8 to 12 weeks is like usually the standard
when
time.
When you're doing the treatment, because when I was talking to your dad about it, he was saying it's like, imagine chemotherapy where you go in, you get your treatment, you have a few days, you're down, blah, blah, blah. This is like chemotherapy on steroids every day.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So it basically is replacing every cell in your body. It's regenerating every cell in your body.
Yeah. So you're getting insane amounts of antibiotics every single day. And then 2 days of the week, you're going to what's called IRAD, where they pretty much drop your blood sugar down really, really low to like 35 or 40. You can't eat anything. And they deliver certain antibiotics that can cross the blood-brain barrier, because Lyme most of the time infects the brain. And the only way to cure that is by crossing the blood-brain barrier. So that's something that you go through twice a week. And it makes you feel terrible. And, you're sitting in there, you have like cold caps on, some people wearing blankets, some people are throwing up, some people are just, it's just awful. Like,
you're sitting next to people that it feels like you're in a death room.
Oh yeah. And some people have Lyme and some people have cancer, and you're kind of going through very similar treatment, aside cancer is going through targeted radiation and chemo, but our version of chemo is IRAD. So you're doing it in the same room as all these people. And I've actually heard from a lot of people that have had Lyme and cancer at the same time that the chemotherapy that they do is way more tolerable than the IRAD that they do. So I think it's just very dependent on the person.
Right.
But yeah, every week, Monday through Friday, you're going in to do these treatments. So it's like,
how long are the treatments?
It kind of varies from day to day. I think the shortest you go in is 3, and the longest you go in is 6 to 7. It just depends on hours. It kind of just depends on what they have on the agenda for the day. And then, you'll do really painful injections. Like I got an injection twice a week that no one in my family got. That's pretty much, it looks like Elmer's glue, and it goes in and it hurts so bad. It makes your whole right side of your body sore for like 3 days. But it's necessary for the types of infections I had, so it's not pretty. I was pretty useless for about 9 to 10 weeks. There wasn't much I could do. I would sometimes feel good enough on the weekends to maybe want to go on like a walk outside, but I was not working. I barely worked during that time, and it was just about all I could do to stay afloat. But mine was very different from my dad's or my brother's, because every single day I was covered in head to toe rashes, because as I was getting treatment, it was flaring up my rashes. So I was living every single day with these massive rashes. I don't know if it's a thing, but we could like totally put a picture of one of them in here at some point so that people could see what it looks like. Because other people in my family have had these rashes too, and they just kind of want to turn a blind eye to it when they know what it is. So yeah, like behind my ears, like in my nostrils, any possible place on my body that you could think of, you could see more rash than you could see skin. And that was true for the entirety of my treatment.
Wow.
So once I was done with that, my dad got tested and found out that he had it too. His was a lot more brain heavy. So his symptoms were way more like brain fog. He's had a lot of concussions from the sports that he's done in the past. So his memory was really bad. He'll repeat the same things over and over and over again of like, okay, you're still in your 50s. Like, kind of weird. And then just like extreme fatigue and joint aching, like more than what would be considered normal or just, maybe standard inflammation. So now that he went through treatment, and his was really hard because he's trying to maintain, a really successful business. And that's really hard to do when you're doing something like that. But somehow he did it with flying colors, like he does everything. But he really was down really bad. But I think probably worse than I was, in the sense of he felt so crappy. But that's just goes to show, like, it's so different for everyone.
Right.
And you can be doing the exact same protocol and it's just different. And now that all of us are on the other side, I finished in around May of this year, and my dad finished in July, I think. And so it takes a little bit of time for your body to detox and find its new normal and homeostasis. But, none of our health have ever been better. And my older brother tested negative, which is so crazy.
Let's talk about that, because you believe you got it in Canada.
Yes.
Is that because you guys used to talk about that? Because people say, okay, it's a tick bite. So it's usually, people typically get it from a tick. Well, they get it from a tick bite in a wooded area, right? I mean, that's where it is. And it's all over. Is it all over the world?
It is now. And you can see it when you look up kind of maps of where Lyme disease is most prominent. I mean, you can get it in Arizona. You can get it in Texas. You can get it in different places. That's at least the research that I've read, and don't quote me, but they travel with people. So, you have a tick on you, and that's how things spread. That's how disease is spread, right? Someone comes from there, brings it here, that kind of thing.
Right.
So that's a big thing with that. But yes, we were in like northeastern Canada for 10 years every summer, playing in the woods. That's all we were doing.
For a long period of time.
Yeah, for 2 to 3 weeks every single summer for 10 years. So it's not really surprising. Our doctors weren't even remotely surprised. That being said, we really could have gotten it anywhere. My mom could have gotten it much younger when she was in Costa Rica. Like, and sometimes symptoms show up right away, and sometimes symptoms shows up 4, 10, 12, 15 years from now.
That's what I'm saying. It lies dormant, and then all of a sudden it flares up, and you're like, well, I haven't left my bedroom for that long. Like, people think that and they don't realize that it's been in their body for so long. It just was dormant.
Yeah, exactly. When I was getting my testing done, the doctor was like, you'd 2 to 5 years, like dead or in a wheelchair. Like, that's how fast it can progress once it's that awakened in your body and starts attacking all of your symptoms. So, I do have some underlying heart stuff that I'm still dealing with and need to kind of follow up with, because Lyme attacks your heart, as like one of our cousins.
Yeah, my other niece, I've talked about Rhiannon's case too.
So it can just affect every single body system, and no one is immune to it. And with that being said, some people can get bit and have the infection, and their body can fight it off because they have good enough antibodies. I would say most of the time that's not the case with Lyme, but it is possible. And there are cases out there like that. But yeah, once we finished all of that, then we were like, okay, well, it's worth looking into my mom and seeing if maybe that's something that she has, because she's been so sick for so long.
When you were going through this, Kinzie, were you like, this has to be what's going on with my mom? Did you think that way or no?
Partially. Totally honestly, I think that she had been sick for a long time. So I had a lot of different things running through my head of what could it be? What could it be?
Makes sense.
But once I started realizing the severity of Lyme and really educating myself on it, I was like a no-brainer. Like, she needs to get tested. And I fought tooth and nail to make sure that we at least tested her to see if this was something that was affecting her. Because if there was, then there was something that we could do, and maybe there was a chance for her to get better. So I don't think initially, but as I started progressing more and more into it, it was definitely like, okay,
we have to at least check.
Yeah. Definitely.
Well, and then talk about that, because you did get her tested and her case was very severe.
Yes, very severe. Like I said, it's not cheap to be doing all of that. So, it takes a lot of people working together to try to make something like that happen, let alone you have 3 people in the family go through it. And then you're like, we're
talking like hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Like, yes, like a lot of money. It's
cash pay.
I can't even fathom how expensive this stuff is. Right. So, there's different things that you're working with there of trying to get the funds for it. Once we finally did, and she did get the tests, it showed, she was worse than any of us, which was really hard because me and my dad and my brothers were still kind of functioning and living, and her quality of life had decreased so bad. And
she was in
really
bed
poor.
24/7.
Yeah, she was. Yeah, her quality of life was not there. And so But that being said, and Vita has seen a lot of people that think they're dying and they're in a wheelchair. They can't walk. They have feeding tubes, much, much worse than my mom was. And you would see them walking out and ringing the bell and having a brand new life. So I knew that there was hope there. I knew. And the doctors, I have been at every single doctor appointment with her. The doctors are very familiar with my whole family, with her case. And they were very confident that they could help. With that being said, Lyme can really attack your brain, which can cause a lot of mental problems as well. So Lyme treatment's not going to fix mental health issues, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. Those are going to be two separate enemies. And
do you think that Lyme is a cause for that?
I think partially. I think because she felt like she was going crazy for so long, you can't help but develop mental health issues like that, with other factors at play. But I do think that Lyme was definitely a factor in it. I wouldn't say the whole thing because it started before that.
Right.
But I do think, especially in the last couple of years, that very well could have, especially because, she was seeing things, she was feeling things, and now we can't say, but we couldn't really say if that was real or not because we didn't get the opportunity to, but it very well could have been.
Right.
And so there's still I think some unknown there, but I definitely think that it played a big role.
Yeah, for sure.
And why she felt crazy and why she was feeling things and seeing things, because that was a very big possibility that stuff was happening.
Right, right. So, okay, in this whole journey, the Lyme journey that you guys, and to clarify, Lyme, you never are completely rid of it. It's just, it's
kind of like cancer where you kind of go into remission, and you can be healthy for the rest of your life and never have another issue, or it can flare back up kind of like cancer can. And really the biggest things that would cause that would be a really traumatic event. So it's ironic because the doctor told me as I was leaving, one of the biggest things that would probably cause this is maybe one of your parents passed away, like a flare up, or, a
traumatic event in your life. Yeah. And then your mom dies.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So, okay. In the Lyme journey with your family and what you've experienced with that, how has that affected your healing around your mom and her illness and how she handled herself in life? Has that had an effect on that and how you feel about any of that? I'm just curious.
I think maybe a little bit. And I think that there's parts of me, I don't want to live with any regret because I don't believe that I need to, but I do think there's parts of me that maybe would have paid attention sooner and maybe not discounted it to, she's crazy or she has other habitual issues or whatever it was. I do think that maybe not that I was selfish at all, because I think that I've always been there for her. But if I just would have put my guard down and not fought so hard of you should be better, you're supposed to be my mom. And maybe I took a step back and was like, how is she really living? And what are these things? And what could I do to try to help her? I think that that's something that I do think about. On the same side, I have done that with different things, and I have tried to send her to different places to get help. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword.
There's a lot of history.
I've tried, but I do think that I wish I would have paid more attention to the physical manifestations that came about the last 3 to 5 years a little bit more than I did.
That makes sense.
And I think a lot of people in my family feel that way now, knowing the positive Lyme diagnosis, but it's also hard to just live your life that way. And
well, there's a lot of history there. There's a lot of things that have happened throughout your lives that make you question things and have your own pain and struggle with the role that was being played and how it's being played. There's a lot of factors.
Yeah.
A lot of factors. Absolutely. And that's very understandable. Okay. So moving on to your mom's passing, I want to talk about, because your mom, and I've talked about this, when I spoke specifically about her and my relationship and a lot of the things that her and I would talk about. And a lot of it was on very deep spiritual communication that we'd have about and experiences that we'd share. It was definitely a place where her and I would exchange a lot that way. Because I feel like now for you, from what I've seen and what you've shared with me and what I've seen you just how you are and how you're operating and what you're paying attention to and what your awareness is, because you have definitely new awarenesses that I don't think you had before. In that, I want to know thinking about your mom, because I don't know, did your mom talk to you guys about that kind of stuff? I'm just curious how deep those types of conversations went with her, with you.
So not so much with me directly, with my little brother. They were very connected in that way. They
Slater,
had a
yeah.
lot of conversations like that, and they definitely connected in that spiritual realm a lot. She would definitely try to get me into, meditation, different things, kind of try to introduce me to the stars and things like that. I think I've always just been a little preoccupied in my immediate present and what's going on in my life, that I didn't really have or want to open my brain up to another realm of reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think that it's always been a little bit freaky to me, of believing in something bigger than what's just right here that I can see. So I think that she had maybe mentioned it, but I knew that she was really into that.
In growing up, did your mom and your dad, when they were together and not together, did they talk about that stuff? Did you talk about God? Did you talk, what was your spiritual upbringing? Because I know you weren't church goers, neither were we.
Yeah.
So, I mean, up until I was, 8 years old, that doesn't really count. But I mean, like, what was your experience through your parents and even your extended family with that? What was that message to you and your brothers?
Yeah. So I think that both of my parents leaving the Mormon church at a pretty young age, they didn't want anything to do with the Mormon church. And so we were not raised in church. We were not raised religious. I think if anything, you could call it like Christianity, because we celebrated Christmas and those kind of things. We were not raised with a religion. We were raised with morals and values of, like, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything, or, always have something to work for. I think if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything was the biggest thing that my parents engraved to us, because they wanted us to, research our own religion or dive into that if we wanted to, but it was never something that was pushed on us. I don't feel like we talked about God very often, so I think that was something new into my adult life that I was incredibly unfamiliar with, which I am not upset about at all, because I think it's allowed me to make my own connection with it. I did not go to church. I just was raised with hard morals and values, and I think that they believed that would get us farther than believing in like one singular religion.
Right. Where are you today?
I don't know. I feel like I definitely, especially the last, I guess, almost 3 months now. It's been almost 3 months to the day that she passed. I think since I have been in college, I've maybe gotten a little more like, what is God? And what is that? And like, could there really be a higher power? I do think that when I started asking those questions, my mom really introduced me to the law of attraction. And she had always listened to Abraham. And so that was something growing up that I always heard her listening to. And I'd be like, oh my God, can you shut this lady's voice off? Like, I don't want to hear this all the time. And it was all the time. So I guess I kind of forgot about that, because she would talk about Abraham a lot. She really believed in the law of attraction. And I think I started to believe in that just from listening and being around it. And I do think it's a really powerful message. And I do think that I fully live like that now, believing in that law of attraction is very real. I also think now, since she's passed, I think, like you said earlier, it takes sometimes a traumatic thing to believe in more. And I kind of was faced with, like, honestly, like, I got kind of dark at first. Like, I was like, I don't want to live without her, and I don't think I'm going to. And I think I sat in that for a couple of days of, like, I was not in a good spot after that happened. I really didn't think that I wanted to be here anymore. And I think the only reason I decided, okay, you know what, like, there's a lot more to live for. And I don't think I would have believed that I could still have a relationship with her if it wasn't for the book that she left, and maybe looking into some things that she was looking into, because that's really the only way that I learned that she truly believed that she just changed form and she was still going to be here. And so I really think that's one of the only reasons that I kind of pulled myself from the other side of, like, okay, you know what? She might be physically gone, but she's just in a different form, and she still is very much here and aware. And I think it might be even more active in my life now than she was, but that's not something I ever felt until this happened.
Right.
So it's very new to me, but the things, like you've said, the things that have happened are crazy.
Yeah. It's funny, backing up really quick, because I can relate to the times when her and I were close. We had hit our close point where we truly did connect and bond. We were at that age, but I remember there were times before that we'd have these conversations, and every conversation was this deep conversation. And I was just like, oh my gosh, can we just like have fun and have a beer or something? Right. And I didn't understand what these deep conversations were coming from. And it was because she was fully entrenched in discovering this for herself and what her reality is, and listening to people like Abraham Hicks and all of those things, manifestation and all the things that I now completely have a much deeper understanding of. And now I've been able to engage with her on those things too while she was here. But it's interesting because I remember that I was just like, I remember feeling young, just like, oh my gosh, why are we like, every time I'm around her, I love her. She's great. They're not bad conversations, but I just want to like have a light conversation.
Yeah. Like always so heavy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So deep. And I was kind of like, okay, I'm over this. But then obviously things changed a lot over time as I made my own realizations and discoveries, and just wanting to have that bond with her that I wanted so badly our whole lives. So it was nice to have that. And it's interesting now, Kinzie, because like you, I feel grateful for my own right, because I discovered these things and was able to share them with her in this space. My only not regret, because I don't have regrets. I think that we live with intention always, but I feel that I wish I could have had these discoveries and realizations for myself sooner while she was still healthy.
Yeah.
Because it would have, I feel like things could have, not that they would have been different. I think that there's reasons things played out the way they did. Mm-hmm. However, it's like, I wish I could have had more time to have those types of conversations and actually appreciated what they were.
Right.
So it's okay. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. And I accept that. I really, truly accept that. But it's interesting because I think back to those times and I think, gosh, I just wish I could have been more awake at that time. So we could have really engaged and talked even more. But I did get a lot of that. She was just so physically sick that it was hard for her to stay engaged for a long period of time. Right. Because she really was just so physically sick. And, we could only be together for so long. And she'd be on such a different clock than the rest of the world, because when she was up, we were sleeping or whatever. Right. So, and it just didn't always work. But I agree with you about the book. And I remember, so just to clarify, she did leave a book behind that is about mediumship. And it really, I think, was a cry to you and your siblings and me to make sure that we're reaching out and that she is there, and she has only changed form, because I know she believed that. We talked about that.
Oh gosh, yeah.
There was no doubt in my mind, because her and I had those types of conversations. And the fact that she left that was just like hey guys, don't forget, it's okay. It's totally okay. And truthfully, Kinzie, for me, and you and I have talked about this, and I think it's now happening for you a lot more. And I want to dive into more of your stuff, because there's a lot that I'm excited to talk about. But with her specifically, I feel, and I've said this before, that because she was so physically ill in this life that she lived towards the end, it made it so she could not do the type of work that I feel that I am definitely here to do. Mm-hmm. And I really feel like she's been a co-creator and a partner of mine in this. And now I'm realizing that she is that. She's just going to be doing it from a different form. Yeah. And I accept that. I'm sad because I'd so much rather hug her and have her tangibly hear and see her and laugh and do all the things that we do, like you and I can do. Mm-hmm. But it just looks different now. So I have to accept it. But the thing that I want to talk about too with you is, you have said some things to me that I was not aware of that are on the more recent side. Not just when your mom passed, you started to realize to pay attention to signs and things that are coming through, and you're getting lots of interactions, messages, and things and manifestations, law of attraction, things that have come to be, because you're now leaning in and you're like, oh my gosh, this is very real. It's true. It's truly happening, right? You can't deny it. It's like once you know something, you can't unknow it. Mm-hmm. So in that regard, what types of things have happened? What experiences have you had that involve your mom, or even that don't involve your mom, that you're starting to wake up to, that you're becoming much more aware of?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, there's so much.
I
don't
know.
even know where to start. I think once I started going through her things after everything happened, I started realizing how important it was for me, and me only. And I did this in private for a while before I really told anyone about it.
Wait, really quick. Did you have any of these experiences that you're going to share before your mom died?
No.
Okay.
At least not
that you
that
can
I
remember.
paying attention to.
Okay.
I do think I've always like heard things a little bit or different things that I've always just been like, oh, maybe I'm just a little kooky or whatever. But no, nothing like anything. It was almost like the day that happened, my whole life completely changed, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously I lost my mom, and like, that's terrible and so sad. And still to this day, it's just so hard. But I've had just so many new awarenesses to things that I didn't even know were possible. Like I said, I think it was hard for me to open my mind that there is more out there. And it's also hard because being young, people are judgmental. People really live by their religion, or they really live by what they believe in. And I think spirituality is hard. I feel like now, or at least maybe now that I've dove into it more, it's more accepted. But going out and talking freely about getting signs from people and different things happening, you know, more often than not, people's reaction is like, oh, okay, if that makes you feel better, and so it's not something that you just want to share all the time,
right,
until you're fully confident in what's happening, because you do get dismissed a lot, and it is scary, and it is, I think a lot of people just think, oh, you're reaching for something to make yourself feel better.
Yep.
So anyway, I started looking into what she was looking into, and I honestly started in private. I don't think I even really told you guys until I was a little bit farther into it. I started reading the book that she was listening to, you know, right up until she passed.
What was the book again?
My Son in the Afterlife.
Mm-hmm.
I forget who it's by. And it's a really powerful, Elisa Medhas, I think.
Okay. And she was actively listening to this book when she passed, right?
I mean, yeah, like the 3 days before, and even the day that she took her own life, she was listening to this like right before.
Right.
And so I felt like that was the best place for me to start, because I needed to know what she was listening to.
Yeah.
And, you know, I took things really far. Like, I went into her screen time. I figured out what time things were happening, what time things were being played. And so I was like, okay, if she could make a choice like this, and, you know, right before that, she's listening to this, like, I have to know what's going, like, I want to know what this is. So instead of going to snippets, I just listened to the book outright, and I listened to it on audio version when I was driving or sitting in my room or doing whatever it was. And I think at first it was really, really hard, because it's like, wow, this is so strange, and like, do I believe it or do I not? You know,
talk in a nutshell what basically she covers in the book. What is it about?
Pretty much, it's about this mom who's still on the earthly plane. She's still alive, and she is talking to a medium, and she's talking to her son through the medium. Her son that took his own life, and it was unexpected, and they didn't see it coming. And it talks about his experiences as to why he did it, what he felt when it happened, and what life after life is like, essentially.
So the whole, basically from the beginning, like the whole thing.
And she actually has her own blog called Channeling Eric, and she talks to her son all the time. They have conversations daily, all the time, but they talk a lot through mediums very frequently. And he shares what life is like on the other side, what it's like passing, what soul transitions are, you know, what all these different, like what your spirit guides are. And so all of this is foreign information to me.
Now, what as you're listening to this, were you like, because you're right, you hadn't done you had no background.
No.
So what was
I'm just
that like? Like, what is all this?
What even are they talking about? Like,
yeah.
And I think books can be hard, because I think a lot of this is what you choose to believe in. The same thing with religion. I really do. And so I think that it's not for everyone, just like religion's not for everyone. And so it took me a while, I think about until like halfway up into the book, that I started realizing that, you know, my mom's death played out pretty much exactly like this one did. And so it started making a lot of sense of, okay, this is what she was listening to. And the kid on the other side, Eric, that's talking to his mother, made it seem very peaceful, made it seem like a very easy transition, and something that he needed to do to eliminate his pain and eliminate his suffering, but that he is still very much there and all the time, and knows things that I don't even know how anyone would know. And so that's when I kind of started understanding, you know, she really needed to be out of the physical pain and mental pain that she was in, because once you cross over, you know, you begin to be able to cleanse your soul, and you see things from a different perspective, and you're able to understand what my purpose was there, and then learn all the lessons that you try to learn on the earthly plane, but a lot of the times you can't. And sometimes you can come back and try again, but you really are awakened once you cross over to what the bigger picture really is, and that there is no judgment, and there is no resentment, and there are none of these harsh feelings. It's just this is what
it just is. It just is.
Yeah. And so I think halfway through I started putting the pieces together with her death, with his, and then also what she really was believing in at the time. And I started feeling like if I was in her shoes and I was in that much pain, I'd probably do the same thing. If I was listening to this kind of information and this was something that I fully believed in, I really can't blame her. I can't be mad at her because I really think that I would do the same thing. And so once I was able to come to a level of like understanding with her decision.
So do you think that her decision was a completely conscious,
Absolutely,
calculated, no doubt about it choice?
100%. I don't think it was a knee-jerk reaction. I think this has been coming for a long time. I think she's been talking about it for a long time in different ways, mostly just given what we've found. But no, it was not I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner. I think it's been an accumulation of maybe 2 or 3 years. And I think then when push came to shove with going into treatment, I think it was kind of one of two options of like, now's my time or never. I won't be able to make this decision once I start with treatment and once all of that's invested in that. And to me, maybe people feel differently. I think that was kind of like what it came down to of like, I've been wanting this for a long time and now is the opportunity because in 2 days I start treatment and I won't have that. And that's what I believe. I think everyone believes a little bit kind of like that, or some people maybe haven't thought about it, but that's what I think.
I'm on the same page with you.
But I think it's very interesting because I listened to the book, I listened to some things that she left behind. And it really started opening my eyes to like, okay, what does it look like communicating with her on the other side? Because I think I was so hung up with things that I had seen, how her death happened, the trauma with that I was so blocked from receiving anything from her because everything felt scary. For the first month, I was just terrified of everything. I couldn't drive a car. I didn't leave my house. There was really nothing that I could do that didn't terrify me. So when I would see different signs or things would happen, it would just freak me out. And I had to overcome that to be able to see, oh, okay, this isn't scary. And I think the turning point for me, and that was when I saw Linda, the medium, which is, you've had her on here before.
Linda was one of my very first podcast episodes. She's amazing.
Yeah. And she's great. And I did a reading with her and, she was able to tell me things. I think that maybe I should have given it a little bit more time, but still what I got from that, I don't think it just validated that it is real and that souls never die and they do just change form, because the information she was able to deliver to me validated that. And I think that is something really hard to believe in if you're on the fence until you see it for yourself and you feel it yourself and you feel that energy coming through with the medium.
It is a feeling. All of a sudden you're just like, okay, there's just no other way. It has to be that.
Because at first I was kind of like, maybe this is a little generic. But then, my grandpa came through talking about my dad. And I'm like, how can you be describing a golf polo that my dad wears probably once a week golfing?
Right.
She doesn't know my last name.
Well, and to be fair, Linda didn't know even that my sister had passed, even though her and I are friends. She didn't even know that.
And she's able to channel people that are living and dead. So I think she thought she was channeling my mom that was still on the earthly plane until she understood, okay, this is what this is. But the things that she was able to tell, she called me out for eating cheesecake alone in my car that not a single person knew about.
I love that story.
My mom didn't want me to feel bad about it. And that was her way of bringing attention to my car because I drove my boyfriend's car for a month. And
because fear. You were afraid.
Out of fear. And I think that was, she said that was my mom's way of trying to, don't feel bad about eating cheesecake because you're grieving. And also you don't need to be afraid of your car. It's just an object. It's okay. And different things have happened. Like my mom has opened my trunk and to random people, they're like, okay, I was sure. And you bumped your key or whatever.
You sent me that text. You're like, Aunt Tammy, look what just happened.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And I was with a person that was able to fully validate it for me. And there has been ways that my mom from the other side has tried to desensitize me to things that have taken place. And I firmly believe that. I believe that she's put me in different positions with new job things that I've had, having another location. Like, the only reason I came about that is because someone knew I was having a hard day surrounding my mom, wanted to introduce me to this lady who was just a nice, loving human who thought I could have good energy, which turned into this whole job opportunity that I have now. Mm-hmm. And then the only reason I came about NP school was because I have been sitting there, like, really thinking. I try to sit outside most days and talk to my mom in the morning when I'm drinking my coffee. And I just have been feeling so lost. Like, what's next? I don't even know how to move forward. Like, I want to get married and I want to have kids. And I think that's been weighing really heavy on me of, like, my mom's not going to be there for any of that. And that's been such a hard pill for me to swallow.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of like, where do I even go? Like, I don't know where to go from here. And her and I had talked about continuing my education here and there. And after nursing school, that was something I always wanted to do, but was never like, I have to do it, just like, oh, that'd be cool. And then I started working and having more freedom. And I'm like, I don't want to go to school. And it was like this random epiphany that I had of, like, it just popped in my brain. It was like, you need to go to MP school. And I was like, she's telling me, like, this is what I need to do.
It was fed into you.
I'm going to, I am going to want to have kids one day. And the chances of me wanting to go back to school are so slim. Like, why not do it now? I'm only 26. I'm still young. And it just feels like she's been guiding me along the way. And I think some people are like, well, I think that's just the trajectory of life. And I'm like, well, no, because I look at a lot of people around me that are directly affected by the situation that aren't as in tune with it. And they're not going down good paths. They're not healing. They're, following different paths that I think everyone goes down paths, like you said, and everything happens for a reason. But I really believe that, like, being 100% sober and really trying to heal myself, I attribute half of it to, like, opening myself up to being able to communicate with my mom, because she has led me, and seeing other people around me directly affected by the same situation, maybe not as traumatic, but just as sad,
as affected.
Yeah. Doing vastly different things that are, still very much lost. And not that I'm not, but you can just see a big difference on, when I've tried to tap into spirituality and understand these things and understand souls and life after death and all of these things, I really feel like you have to believe it in order to receive it. And I think a lot of people around me want to receive it, but they haven't overcome that block of believing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's what's so interesting, Kinzie, is that going back to the law of attraction and actually manifesting, because we're constantly manifesting. It's just how we're vibrating and what determines what it is we manifest, whether it's stuff that we dislike or like. You manifest more when, first of all, you recognize that you are manifesting and that these things are happening and miracles are all around you. And when you recognize those things, you get more of them. They continue to present themselves to you. So you almost, like, as soon as you, like you said, some people discount it as, well, it's a coincidence. And you're like, no, it's not.
There are no coincidences.
Yeah, right. There are no coincidences. But once you realize and you acknowledge that whatever it is that happened in that moment was not a coincidence and was truly a sign, a symbol, a manifestation, to call it whatever you want. When you acknowledge it and have awareness around it, you then become open, and then it just floods in and it takes you down the path, and it does guide you and it nudges you in ways that you're like, I didn't see that coming. Why did that pop in my head? What is this about? And you're actually asking the questions and saying, I'm listening. Like, that was not random. Like, why this happened? Okay, I'm listening. And then when you realize that you're aware and you're hungry, it keeps presenting more to you.
Right.
So you're creating your path because you're constantly manifesting. Yeah. So the people that do have that blocked energy where they can't seem to move past, and they're like, no, it's like the pessimist versus the optimist. It's like, everything is possible. And people do get stuck in the thought that, well, I don't know. The second you have that hint of doubt, it shuts it off.
Right.
Like immediately, the second you question it and say, I don't know about that. Is that really happening? Did that really, I mean, it's like silly little things. Like somebody will pop in my head. I'll be driving in my car and somebody will pop in my head at the thought of them. And literally within 5 minutes or less, I get a text, I get a phone call, and I'm like, of course, there you are. And I laugh because every time it happens, I'm like, there you are. Yeah. I knew I'd hear from you. Or you don't know, or you that person pops in your head and all of a sudden you hear something's going on with them. Like they might need some outreach. They might need a friendship. They might need a hug, whatever. Exactly. You know that something is going on. So none of those things should ever be discounted.
Yeah.
And the more open you are, the more you receive of it. And it becomes truly like a magical way of living.
Oh, yeah. No, it totally does. I think it's crazy because the people that I've crossed paths with since this has happened, people that I even knew before, but we've connected on a totally different way of like, you know, either they've come to me of like, I have a message for you, or like, you have these abilities that you don't even know that you have yet, or just different things. Now that I've opened myself up to that, it's amazing the way that my relationships have changed. My like awareness has changed to certain things. And it's so real and it's so powerful. And I think at first when I was diving into it, it's like what you're talking about, like doubt, like, you know, maybe I'd say something around a person that maybe doesn't believe in that, and it would completely diminish what I thought was happening because that person had planted doubt. And now that I know that things are really happening, I don't even really feel the need to like say it out loud or get that external validation, because I'm like, oh, hey mom, like I know that's you.
It's for you anyway.
And exactly. And so I just find myself not even really saying things out loud unless I'm, you know, maybe around like you or Grammy or different people that are really in tune to it, because I don't need that validation of,
or the shut off valve.
Yeah, right. I don't need you to shut me down,
yeah,
right? I know what's real. And maybe it's not real for you, but it's so real for me. Yeah. And there's no other explanation for it other than it is real and it is happening. And I think that everyone has the ability to have this awareness. It's just whether or not they want to open their heart to it, honestly. And I think that's so true. And you had told me that a little bit at first of, I think you just need to open yourself up, because once you open yourself up, these things will happen. And it's not like one of those things of like, oh, your mom died, you just want to feel better. Like, okay, yeah, if I was in control of feeling better, I wouldn't be in pain, right? Like if I could control this, I would have controlled it.
Exactly.
But what I can control is what I choose to listen to and surround myself with and believe in. And it's not even something I have to believe in anymore.
No, it's just allowance.
There.
It's like, just allow it.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's just part of my existence, which I think is so cool that something this profound and amazing can happen in such a short amount of time. Because I think that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think everyone's maybe a little different, but it usually takes a while for people to get to a place of like being so open.
Yeah, it's everybody. Here's what's interesting to answer your question. Everybody is on their own path, and we determine what our path is before we even get here. We know when we're going to wake up. We know when we're going to have new awarenesses. We know when we're going to step into it. We may go into it and come back out of it. We're always in a cyclical way in this life, because truly, Kinzie, we have to, the key to feeling and understanding peace and having love, like knowing what love is inside of yourself, that it's not outside of you. It's the balance of being a person, a human body person that's walking in this life with all the people that are in it, whether you chose them to be there or not, like your family, things like that. But it's having the awareness of the fact that I am in this body, and this body is actually my antenna to tune in to all these things that are me. And when we can walk that line of spirit and human, it changes your whole perspective on everything. And that's when the magic happens. And even when the pain comes, because the pain will never stop. The pain's going to keep coming. People are going to die. People are going to get sick. You're going to have a bad day. That stuff is not going to stop. But the key is to remember that stuff is outside of you, and you've actually created it for you.
Right.
And that's part of your path. And the moment you can remember that and feel the pain, like you said, I wish I could not feel the pain. Well, I'm sorry, but the magic is feeling the pain.
Right.
It is living in the pain and letting yourself feel it at its core. Because then on the other side of that, when you move through it, it's like, oh my gosh, totally new awareness. If you block it and say, I don't want to feel this, I'm going to cut it off because I need to be over this. It's taking too much time and I should be better by now. And all those things, you are completely shutting off your magic.
Right. No, I totally agree. And I think sometimes I get so far down into believing this stuff that I'm like, I start looking at people and I'm like, wow, you're just like a vessel for a soul. And like, you know, like sometimes I do get like, whoa, it's kind of trippy.
It is,
when you're just being introduced to it and becoming aware. Like, I think I was talking to Grammy the other day on the phone and I was saying that like, oh my gosh, you really are just a vessel for the soul to be on the humanly plane or like the earthly plane. And like, how weird, like,
I know.
It's crazy, but then it's cool. And you get back to like your day to day of like, okay, you know, but sometimes I think really hard about it and I'm like,
it's fun, isn't it?
You know, like it's crazy because I just think that I wish that this stuff, I admire so much what you do on your podcast because I think bringing awareness to this stuff is so amazing. And that's why I was so glad to come on here, because if I can help anyone or share my story and it helps anyone, like I'm an open book. And yes, I think I've done things in my life that maybe I'm not the most proud of when I was younger and I'm trying to grow. And the only way to grow is to acknowledge the things that you've done and you want to be a better person. And I think if I've learned anything out of my mom's death is I want to be the best version of me I can be. And I think that might be like, at least I've seen it's an unusual route to take to really try to take a tragedy and make your life better. But I know that's what she would have wanted for me. And I feel like I don't have any other option. Like, this is what I'm here to do. And I feel like now that I'm becoming more aware, I'm starting to understand like what my purpose is. And I think it's really cool that I think you found what your purpose is to like share this stuff and become more aware and share spirituality and have intentional conversations that people can listen to and not, you know, maybe they're experiencing the same things other people are. And they're like, oh my gosh, like, okay, I don't have to feel crazy, because sometimes I feel what you would call crazy, and it's not crazy. It's just everyone's different. Everyone's experiencing something different daily. But I think, like, have you ever talked about like the love anyway?
No. Well, yeah, I did on Nikki's podcast. That was my number one takeaway.
Yeah,
I mean, now, and I don't know if I've shared this, but so I had a vision of my mom and I getting a tattoo that says "Love Anyway" with your mom's ashes in it, on Grammy's birthday, which we did do. But the "Love Anyway." So here's what's so interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's where I was going to go next. Is that in saying everything you said, your purpose, really, Kinzie, our only purpose is to love ourselves and accept what we are and who we are, because all we are is love. All we came to do is be and just be. We're just experiencing things. And like you said, we can get down on ourselves. We are so hard on ourselves and we judge ourselves. And that is the only thing going on. That's the only thing going on, though, is we're truly judging ourselves. When we're judging others, it's because we're judging ourselves. So when you can forgive yourself of whatever you think you need forgiveness of, which, by the way, you don't. Yeah. You don't need forgiveness of yourself, because you just are. And it's okay that you are what you are. So, but the forgiveness piece is huge, because when you can really truly forgive and give yourself compassion and love yourself so much at your core that is your only purpose, is to love within. Because when you do that, you're loving everyone else, because we're all one.
Right.
We're all connected. We're all part of the same thing. Like when you were having that moment when you're on the phone with Grammy and you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. Like you're having one of those ethereal moments where you're like, oh my gosh, this is out of body experience. And I get that a lot when I'm talking in this space, doing this podcast, because
that's what triggered me to say it, because I'm looking at you and I'm like, oh my gosh, you're just a vessel.
It's true, but it's true. All of a sudden you have this awareness. You're like, this is such a trip. Like I really feel like this feels so real, this interaction in this body, and it's all great. And it is real. But at the same time, you're like, but really what's going on? There's so much more to this. So much more to this. So, and that's why when I started this, and the Love Anyway is about loving yourself anyway. Love everything and everyone and you anyway, because that's all that it is. Yeah. That's all that it is. And the more you can have that awareness around that's what's really going on. And that's why when people have near-death experiences and they have all these mystical experiences in their life, it always comes back to, I've never felt that kind of love before. Because you can't explain it in this realm. It's so difficult to explain. Words get in our way. I say this all the time. I wish I mean, I don't wish, because there's a reason that it's not set up this way, but sometimes I'm like, gosh, I just wish that everything was telepathic. I didn't have to explain myself in words or language, because it just is.
Yeah. And
you just know.
It's construed in all the things, and it's...
Language is a huge barrier. Kinzie, when you think about things, you're not a religious person. I don't know how much you know about the Bible, but there's so much, even in the words in the Bible, with mistranslations and what the messages are about just Jesus. That's just one example of so many that have happened throughout eons of time. But people, it's like a game of telephone. Mm-hmm. Language can really get in our way and really hold us up, even when we're trying to communicate. Like you're explaining to somebody, you don't feel like you don't have to explain anything, because you don't. Mm-hmm. It's really for you anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
It's your gift.
Yeah.
So you don't have to share it. The reason I feel so called to share it is because I think so many people don't realize that what they are experiencing is something that's bigger than them, and just having the awareness and having conversations like this with people, like you said, I feel like I'm going through this fast. That's how I feel like I've been on the fast track too, Kinzie. Mm-hmm. It's been like, bam, as soon as I became aware of it, it was like, here we go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like fast forward. Mm-hmm. You just can't not know it. And then that's all you see now. Right. You can't not see it.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because people will say, have their own opinions about it or whatever. And I definitely feel like there's days where I'm way more in tune, and there's days where maybe I'm just kind of going through the motions. Mm-hmm. And so people will be like, well, you're not. And I'm like, but you don't know, because you're not in my brain. And I'm actually thinking about it 24/7, but I'm still, I'm like living my life and trying to do things. And so I feel like people, at least that I've come across, are like, you're only that way if you're fully preaching it 24/7 and are living this spiritual thing. And I just don't even think that's true. I think most people feel this way. And I think a lot of people experience these things, but that doesn't mean that you still can't carry on with your day and have relationships and all the things without always talking about it.
Well, here's the thing. It's about just knowing that that's what you are and living your life. You came here and you incarnated into a human body to experience that. Mm-hmm. So why on earth would you walk away from that? That's a gift. This whole human experience, you can't live in what people call the woo-woo. You have to, there's a balance. Mm-hmm. You have awareness of the fact that you are a spirit and you're a soul having a human experience. But if you don't acknowledge and live the human experience, you're completely missing the whole point. That's why you came here.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's all crazy. Like, yeah, with your tattoo, like Linda had pointed out my tattoo because I had it, and
talk about your tattoo, because that was cool too. How that came. Actually, the whole tattoo story was cool. The place that I went to, like the whole thing was cool. Again, synchronicities and just nudges.
Totally. So when she passed, for some reason, like one of the first things that popped in my head was like, I'm getting a tattoo with her ashes in it. And I was just like dead set on it. I thought it was maybe going to be like this massive hummingbird, which I still think I want to get. I just like haven't really found the place, but I just wanted one, and I wanted one now. And her saying to everyone, but it was something that she said to me a lot too, was to the moon, the stars, and beyond. And those were some of her last words. And I just think they're really powerful. I think she really meant that every time she said it, like, I love you to the moon, the stars, and beyond. Like, those are just really powerful words that remind me so much of her. And so I did some research, because not everyone does tattoos with ashes. And a lot of people have some strong opinions about them, which is totally fine. You're totally entitled to what you feel.
Yeah.
But I just think it's cool that she's like a part of me and you every day. Mm-hmm. And so I went to this tattoo shop up in Cave Creek, and it's amazing. What's it called again? Lighthouse Tattoo. And I had just called the guy and kind of explained to him what I wanted. And he was like, totally, come on in. So Chris and I went in, and I was going to do like big, well, in my mind, I don't have tattoos really. So I was like, oh, I can just do like really tiny writing of the words. And he's like, that's not going to work. It's going to smudge. It's going to look so weird. This is way too long. And words are hard in a tattoo unless they're very short and sweet.
Yes.
And so he was like, maybe symbolism. And so he started just drawing out different things, and he drew his first one out, and I was like, boom, that's it right there. And so it's like to the moon, the stars, and beyond, incorporated with like an infinity sign in it with her ashes in it. And I think it's really cool. It's small, it's dainty, but it's still big enough, and I see it all the time. And when I got that maybe a week or two before my mediumship reading, and she kind of was just like nudging at it, because I was like, I wonder, you know, if she knows that I did that, and sure she does. Like, she knows
It came
everything. I mean, she knew about
She knew about the cheesecake.
She knew about the cheesecake. She knew about the Ugg slippers I had just gotten. She knew all the people that I had wanted to show up in that reading showed up very clearly, were very clearly outlined that they were there. Like, the black and white baby photo of my little sister was brought up in the reading of, I have a black and white baby photo. Does that mean anything to you? Like, you know, she knew about the poem that I read at the funeral. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, but like, Linda knows nothing about that. Like, things that, like, she knew where I lived, which has changed since my mom has passed. So I just think it's wild that you can't make that stuff up. Like, that stuff's not on Google. It doesn't, you know, you just can't come about that information other than truly getting it from the source on the other side.
Yep.
And I think that's so cool. But then I think it's cool that all of a sudden your tattoo tied into the same place with that piece of glass and going, like, it's just crazy how,
Yeah, I know.
well, it's not crazy, but it's just really cool how that stuff happens when you're paying attention, because a lot of people will be like, that's a coincidence, but there are no coincidences. Like, everything is intertwined, everything is working together. And it's just like, do you want to pay attention to it or not? Like, everything truly happens for a reason, and we are living our lives and things happen that maybe we don't understand, but it's all happening for a reason.
Yeah. Well,
even
and
if we don't like it.
And it's happening for us. It's a gift for us that we have created and brought into being so we can experience. It's not even to learn, it's to experience, because that's what we want to do. Mm-hmm. The tattoo story I thought was really interesting. And it's funny, I told you this too when I had my reading with Linda years ago. And I brought through 12 people, which I asked specifically to be there before the reading, and they all showed up too. And when she was doing my reading, at the time I had a fake hummingbird tattoo on my ankle because I still plan on getting my hummingbird tattoo, which will happen probably this month. And after your mom died, that was my call too. It was like, now it's time for my hummingbird tattoo. And when you said the ashes, I was like, oh, that's perfect. That's exactly what I'm going to do. And it was funny because that whole thing changed, and I'll explain that story in a minute because that all came in a vision with my mom, or with Grammy. But before that, I had this fake tattoo on my ankle, which is where I want to do it, and it was totally faded. And because I always put there because I wanted to make sure that's where I wanted it, and I'd always experiment with fake tattoos, little stick-ons, and we'd get them down in Rocky Point and little things. And she's like, I keep seeing this like hummingbird. She's like, do you have a tattoo? And I go, no. And she said, why? I'm seeing this like really faded tattoo. It looks like a tattoo on of a hummingbird. And I was like, oh my gosh. I said, I have a fake hummingbird tattoo that is fading away because it's a temporary one, and it's on my ankle. And she goes, they love it. And I was like, what? She's like, yes, they want you to make it permanent. And I was like, I'm going to, but this was years ago. And I was like, no, I will. I'm going to. That's my plan. I just hadn't do it. So anyway, that is coming. And then the one with the vision, like you said, there's just nudges. It was in a meditation, and it was really, really powerful. I had just closed out a meditation, and I came out, and it was the most strong, clear vision of my mom and I, Grammy and I, with these tattoos. And it looked a very certain way. It had an infinity symbol, and it was with the words love anyway, which is what my biggest gift that I received from my sissy was love anyway. And it came through the words of the mouth of my mom, Grammy. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's how we're going to commemorate her on our bodies. And by the way, Grammy is so anti-tattoo.
I know.
She swore in her whole life she would never, ever, ever, ever allow us. Of course, she can't control her adult children, but she's like, don't you ever get a tattoo. That's terrible, terrible. And I would never.
Was the same way.
I know. Well, that's what's so funny.
I know.
And so I already knew I was getting one. So I had blown my mom's opinion out the window. So that didn't matter for me anymore. All my siblings, though, nobody has tattoos.
Yeah.
And we're all adults, and I'm the youngest. So anyway, I was gonna be the rebel child. But then I get this vision, and I'm like, Grammy had said it in passing when Nikki passed that maybe she would get one too. When you had mentioned the ashes, so I was like, oh, that's a great idea. Mm-hmm. And then get this vision, and I'm like, no, it's happening on her birthday. So I call her up. Of course, I don't find her right away. And there was that whole thing. But then
gosh. Oh my.
But then I finally got a hold of her, and because I was super emotional when I tried to call her, but I didn't get through. So I told her what happened, and she was like, oh my gosh, 100% yes, I'm doing this. So now on her birthday, we went and got these matching tattoos that look like infinity symbols. It says love anyway, and it has Nikki's ashes in it. And my mom got a tattoo. Grandma got a tattoo.
I know. I still think it's so crazy. And hers looks so, like your guys' both look so good, but I'm shocked
we all were. I was so happy that she said yeah. And it was like 100% without any question of a doubt. She's like, oh yes, we're doing this. And I was like,
but she's also someone that I feel like I've seen blossom in her thinking and awareness and things like that since, my mom has passed. Like, I feel like she's trying to open up a lot, which I think is really cool to see how she's just another testament to traumatic things happening and it's causing a shift in people.
Oh, for sure. Because your perspective changes. I always say this, perspective really is everything. Mm-hmm. When you can shift your perspective on how you're looking at something, whether it's something that you like or don't like, it can change everything for you and make your life so much more clear, more peaceful, more joyful, more full of love, more patient, more kind, more compassionate towards yourself and others. Mm-hmm. So it's so powerful. And I agree with you. Grammy is, she's had a tough time, and I swear one day I'm going to get her on this podcast.
I think you will too.
I talked to her recently about it. And she said, I will. I just don't know when. She has a crazy story to tell about her life. She's lived a big life. So we'll get her on here at some point, and when she's ready. I'm not going to force. That has to be. And it's funny because I don't remember who it was on. Who did I was after I did the podcast about your mom, and you reached out and you said, I would love to be on her podcast. I was like, oh my gosh, yes, 100% yes. So I'm so glad that you wanted to do this.
Yeah.
I'm so glad.
Well, I just feel like, things have happened in my life, especially in the year 2024, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
Has probably been the most challenging year of my life, just with being so sick with Lyme and then finally being on the mend. My body's never been in a better place mentally. I'm so amazing. Like in August, was probably the healthiest I think I've probably ever been, aside from when I was really young doing gymnastics. And then, something just unimaginable happens. And I really had always thought that if something like this happened, it would just take me down. It would just destroy me, because I loved her so hard and so much in such a almost toxic way, I guess you could say. I had this longing for this relationship that I don't think was meant for her and I to have on the earthly plane. And I think that we can have it now. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really cool. And I think it takes a lot of understanding to get there. Mm-hmm. I think one thing that was always so cool about my mom is that no matter what she was going through, or she had a hard life too. She's had a lot of struggles. She's had a lot of hurt, a lot of pain, and a lot of illness. And I think that one thing that most people that I know can agree on is she never judged anyone. No. Ever. Mm-hmm. You could go and you could tell her anything, even if it was on one of her worst days, and she just did not judge people. And I think that's really, really cool, because I feel like I find myself judging people more than I would like to, and I don't want to be that way. And I think that's one goal that I've really tried to make is love anyway, and really try not to pass judgment, because if people have been passing judgment on me these last 3 months that don't know me, I'm sure it's, at times not great. And it's just shown me you don't know what anyone's going through at any given time. Mm-hmm. So maybe if someone's walking down the street and they don't have the best look on their face, maybe their mom just died. You just don't know. Mm-hmm. And so I think that just treating everyone equally with kindness is really important. And not saying that I do it all the time, but something that I'm really working towards, because she really lived that way. She just never judged anyone, no matter what it was. When I was in my college years, I could call her and tell her something that I did, and she'd be like, wow, that's impressive and a lot, but I still love you. And I think that's the biggest takeaway I want to take from my mom. And imploring a new practice like that on your life isn't just easy, and it doesn't just happen overnight. Mm-mm. But I think she taught me a lot of things that I wasn't even aware of until after she passed, of things that she has taught me and left for me. And I think that's the biggest one, is to just be able to love people anyway, like you guys keep saying, and just don't judge anyone. And I feel like not judging someone is talked about a lot, and everyone's like, oh, don't judge me, or don't judge, different genders or races or whatever it is. But to truly be in a place where my mom was, of like genuinely not judging someone, is so hard to do, because society's so competitive, and we're so, I have more, or I'm better at this, or I'm more educated, or whatever it is, and I think that's a place that I really want to get to one day, is just to really be as judgment free as possible, because everyone deserves that. And I know that I've seen a lot of grace in that these past 3 months, of people not judging me and really just letting me be where I need to be in that moment. And the people that, did have hard times with that, like, I noticed that not even because I shut them out, but they're just not really in my life anymore. And I think that they're not in my life for a good reason. But yeah, I just think that was something really powerful that she left behind, is to really remind me not to judge anyone. And she came from some gnarly places, and she still wasn't judging anyone. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, and the key to all that, Kinzie, really is to choosing you and putting you first, and centering yourself and loving yourself at your core, the good, the bad, the ugly, all of it. Love anyway. Love anyway. Love yourself anyway, no matter what's going on outside of you, because that's all we've got. That's all that is. That's really all it is. That's our only purpose. We have a purpose. Our purpose isn't what we do in this life. Our purpose is what we are.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you really only have you. You can have a family, you can have all that stuff, but you really only have you.
Well, and that's all you truly need. Because it's connected to everything else, really. So when you choose you, and you put you and what you need, and knowing and loving yourself and accepting yourself, you are truly free, and it makes everything so different. It shifts that perspective, and the judgments melt away. And like I said, we are human. We make mistakes. We do things that aren't kind. We do things as people because we're constantly hit with adversities outside of us, and we have to manage that. But when you have more awareness around what's going on, and your perspective changes, your compassion level goes up. And all of a sudden you're looking at things from different lenses, and you're like, okay, that was pretty harsh. I probably didn't need to do that. But what is it about me? Why am I feeling that way about myself? Look at it like a mirror. When you're passing judgment, or you're accusing, or you're angry, or whatever those things are, it's directed at you.
Totally.
So when you can say, what is it that's going on inside of me? It's not a direct reflection, but there's something going on. And when we can say, oh, yeah, I don't like that I do that. I don't like that about myself. Okay, I'm aware of that now. I can give myself some compassion, and I can forgive that. It's okay that that's part of me. It's okay that that's who I am. I love myself anyway.
Totally.
Right? It changes everything. Yeah. And it's hard. It's not easy. It's not easy. We don't master it as humans. We just don't, because we're not meant to. That's part of the experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, really quick before we go, I want to, where can people find you and your med spas? Like, do you have websites? Like, what's the best way for people to find you? Because I'm sure people will want to engage with you just because you're such a beautiful, soft, gentle soul.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I do have a website. It's called Unfiltered-Rally Me IV, but I feel like Instagram's probably the best place and what I see the most. And it's just Unfiltered Medspa on Instagram. And my DC Ranch location, I practice out of Janie Bell Salon, which I feel like she's pretty popular. So yeah, Janie Bell Salon or Unfiltered Medspa is a really easy way to find me, and I feel like I see my Instagram all the time, and that's how the majority of people
find you,
reach out. Yeah. And I'm posting my stuff on there that I'm doing, like my before and afters and things that I'm into and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's probably the best place is Instagram.
I'll put all that in the show notes so people can find it and be able to find you. What parting advice do you have for people that are starting a journey? Because you have started a journey that you now can't look back. What advice do you give to people out there to be able to lean into that?
I think the biggest thing I could say is, even if you're doubting yourself, or even if you feel like maybe I'm reaching, like, just reach. Like, just be open to it and allow those doors to open, even if you feel like you don't have the support around you, because you don't need it. And you're not crazy or different if you feel like you do feel this way. And I feel like there are so many people out there that would love to talk. Like, I know, like, you're a great outlet. If someone reached out, like, someone could totally reach out to me. Like, I'm so open to talking about this stuff. And I feel like I've noticed that as things that go, like, that I go through in life, like, oh, I wish there was just like that one place that I could go, you know, and you've been that one place for me in this whole journey. And I think that's really awesome. And I think everyone should have that. And so there are I think I just got lucky that you're my aunt, but there are a lot of places to reach out and research. And there are so many resources out there that if you do feel like, okay, I feel like the floodgates are opening, like, look into it, like, dive into it. And it doesn't need to be real for anyone else as long as it feels real to you. And you'll know if it's real to you, if it feels good. And I feel like that was a big thing in my mediumship reading of deciphering what's scary and what's truly my mom, like what was my trauma response and what's my mom. And she completely validated that, you know, seeing dead people and being really afraid of the dark and those things, that's not her. That's my brain doing some weird thing with trauma. What is her is all the hummingbirds that I see and, you know, her opening my trunk and all the different, like, she leaves a lot of pennies for me and she messes with my TV all the time. And it's almost like she does it when it's a show I shouldn't watch because it's not going to make me feel good. And this has happened to me like 3 different times now. Where, like, I will try to turn on a show that I know maybe is a little bit dark, that might be a little bit triggering to me. And every time it's either just about to start or I'm trying to get there, my TV shuts off. Every freaking time. It happened again yesterday.
Wow.
And I know that
That's
it's
amazing.
her. Like, just these different things have happened. And once you can become aware, they're not going to send anything dark. They're not going to send anything painful. They're only going to send useful, loving things down. But I think the biggest thing is understanding what frequency you need to be on, because when you're in deep grief, they can't come through. Like, they can't be there. And so I feel like when people get stuck in that grief, they're like, I'm not getting anything. Like, why is nothing happening? And it's like, they're not able to. And so once you can pull yourself up a little bit, raise your vibration, raise your frequency and your energy, you'll start seeing things. But when you're in that, you know, and we've seen it with our family a lot, when you're in that really, really dark place, you're not going to get much. And I only know that now based on research and listening to things and understanding in your journey and things like that, and seeing it firsthand of when I'm in a higher vibration versus someone that's close to me isn't, they're not receiving. And you just really have to pay attention, but don't be afraid and don't feel like, oh, I'm weird or afraid to share it, because at the end of the day, like, no one really cares and no one is really thinking about what you're doing all the time because we're all so busy thinking about ourselves.
Right.
And so I'm trying to remember that, you know, whoever's watching this, I don't think their MO is sitting there like, oh, this girl's weird. Like, no, they're probably sitting there thinking about, like, wanting to dye their hair or something. Like, you know, like it's not that serious and people don't care as much as you think they do.
No,
and so
they don't.
It's okay to be genuinely you.
Yes.
And if it feels good, then run with it, because why not? Like,
well, and
your
people are going to gravitate to you, and the people that are not your people will gravitate away.
And that is something that you have been telling me for a long time.
True.
And it is so true.
Yeah.
With friendships, with family members, with work, with everything. Like, that is probably the most true statement you've ever said.
Yeah.
Like, that's really how it goes.
It does. It happens. People come into your lives at certain times for certain reasons. And when it's no longer necessary, they move out of your lives, and it's okay that that's what happens. Totally. And then new ones come in and you're like, oh, and when you start to understand what's happening when that happens, it's just awareness. And you'll be like, oh, that makes sense. I can bless and release that. I think that's good. Like, I don't need that anymore, apparently. Even when it hurts sometimes. But then also the new comes in and you're like, oh, they're here. That's interesting that they happen to show up. Well, they didn't just happen to show up. You manifested them.
Right.
You pulled them right on in. And it was time for you two to connect, or whatever the thing is. So just trust that and know that it's real and it's only for you. For you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being so open and candid and just sharing, because Kinzie, I think it's so important for people to understand it. And this is fresh. This is new. This hasn't been years of time that you've gone through this, and it's blown me away how open and ready you are for this, because otherwise it wouldn't be happening for you.
Yeah. Totally.
You're ready. You're like beckoning it right in, and it's coming in hard and fast. And it's amazing and it's beautiful to see. And I encourage you to just stay on your journey, because you're in it.
Yeah.
You are in it. And I'm so happy to be beside you, to watch it and be part of it and share and everything that's going on. It's such a gift in my life. I'm so grateful.
Oh, thank you so much.
I love you so much.
I love you too. You're the best.
So I hope this was helpful to all of you out there. If this message spoke to you, or you feel that it would speak to somebody that you know, please, 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 I encourage you to share it. That's what this whole thing is all about. It's really intended for people to get information and messages that are meant for them at any given time. And you just never know where someone is in their path. So if you feel called and you don't know why, do it anyway. It also helps people learn, grow, evolve, all of those things, as well as yourself, because the gift is really in the sharing. If you are listening to this, you can also tune in. We do have a YouTube channel at Tammy Tuesday Life, so make sure you look us up there, and you can subscribe so you can get more of these episodes as they come out. And also my website, there's additional information, a blog and things there as well, at TammyTuesday.com, and social media is at Tammy Tuesday Life. So please be sure to follow us there. And always leaving you all with so much love and light. And remember, life, love, and purpose, it all begins with you. Peace out.